protein. Now your muscles are bigger. Now, when you get to a certain point where you're ready, you start cutting.
Right.
And what would be the cutting?
So the cutting phase, so let's just say that you're at the spot that you have the amount of muscle that you want, right? And let's just say that you've been doing a relatively clean bulk. Is that just kind of like a sculptor takes like the marble, they start sculpting and trying to get the design. That's essentially what a person is going to be doing when they're cutting. Removing the body fat, that's the sculptor. Removing the
That's
excess
a good
marble.
analogy. Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah, and then kind of just cutting it down, getting the rips, and seeing more definition in what you're doing. And I think that's ideally, whatever your goal is, everybody wants to at least look relatively lean, right? Unless you're a power lifter, which I guess it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, you're just like a big person just trying to move the most
all
amount
the
of weight.
mass.
Yeah. But for the most part, I think everybody at least wants to be relatively lean, where they're able to see muscle definition, they're able to see maybe a six-pack, or they're able to see, whatever it is,
Just be more defined.
striations. Exactly. So once you start getting into the cutting phase, you take that 2,500 calories that you might be doing total, and you cut that maybe by 500 calories, meaning that you're going to only be eating 2,000 calories on a daily basis.
Right.
Kind of doing it that way where you're not too extreme, so it's kind of sustainable as you go day by day. And a lot of people, what they do is when they're going into their cutting phase, they actually might just do a 100 calorie deficit. And then every week they keep adding an additional 200 or reducing it by an additional 100 or 200.
So they don't really notice it.
Exactly.
In
Your
other
body
words,
kind of starts getting used to the deficit that you're in. Because if you go from 2,500 calories, which is your maintenance calories, and you reduce it to 1,000 calories, you're going to feel that in one day. You're just going to be like, man, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
Right? So you kind of just stair step it down for
Little by little, but not all in one space.
And
yeah.
And workout wise, that's where you're kind of saying like you're kind of more emphasizing like if you're kind of like you're working on your abs, like you're doing more ab workouts. If you're working on more of your legs, you're doing more leg workouts while you're doing that, right?
Yeah. So the fitness isn't going to change. Maybe the only difference was going to be the amount of cardio that you're going to be doing. Cardio is, and that's a different topic. Don't neglect the cardio if you're going to be trying to reduce body fat.
Because you don't want to lose all that weight and then the muscle also goes away. That's the whole point.
Right.
That's the whole purpose of bulking. So when you start your cut, you hope that your weight and your protein stays the same. Or sorry, not your weight, your muscle mass and your protein stays the same. That way, as the fat is shredding off, the muscle's being exposed.
Gotcha.
That's the whole purpose.
Exactly.
So your workout really shouldn't change, just like you said.
So when you're in that deficit, obviously what's happening is that your body is not getting the correct amount of calories that it needs to be sustained, right? So you're reducing it because you're forcing your body to
use it, the fat cells.
Going into the fat cells, burning that while retaining the most amount of muscle that you can. So you got to keep the protein high, and you got to keep the weightlifting pretty intense.
Yeah, you're tricking the body basically.
Exactly. It's
crazy.
So like a good diet for that would be kind of like a keto diet, right?
You can do a keto
Not necessarily,
diet, but yeah, it's some people. I've seen people do a keto diet where they increase the amount of fats, reduce the amount of carbohydrates, forcing the body to go more
into
your
a caloric
fat
deficit.
Yeah, a deficit, and then go into your fat reserves.
I mean the caloric deficit, but also doing it like keto, where you're doing more, like you said, fats and proteins than carbohydrates.
And I think going into that, I think there's been a negative stigma on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates
are good.
They aren't bad. You need them. It creates the energy that you're going to be burning. It's where you go into that surplus because of the carbohydrates. For the most part, most people are going to be in a surplus because of the amount of carbohydrates that they're eating, whether it be through breads, pastas, whatever it is, sugar.
Yeah.
And then that's where it kind of blows it out. But there was kind of like a movement, I won't go into depth, but back in the 90s or 80s where carbohydrates were seen as bad, like really bad, and that's where like the keto.
The whole triangle, remember that triangle, the food pyramid or whatever?
Pyramid
yeah, it was horrible because it was like total opposite of what you're hearing nowadays.
Yeah, so and I guess it really depends on which nutritionist you're going to be listening to, but relatively like carbohydrates aren't the worst. As long as you're getting them from healthy food sources.
It's all